Never would have imagined that so many people would be mad about people having free speech. It's very weird. I still don't get it. But, back to kind of what's going on here. We were talking about the biggest story. I don't know. I don't know if it's the biggest story of the year or the decade. It's a big story. Maybe it's not that big because most of us already kind of knew it was happening, but now we have the smoking gun, and that smoking gun is the Twitter files, where basically Elon Musk has basically gone back in and pulled all the files, like the email correspondence and all these types of things, and released them. Said, hey, everyone, look at it. Gave them to a couple reporters, Matt Taibbi, and a couple others, and said, hey, here, you go through them first, and now they're all published for everyone to go read, and you can go read all these files for yourself. It helps to have the reporters go through it first and kind of filter some of the more important stuff out for you. They got weeks and weeks to spend on this. You and I mostly don't. However, what has come out has been nothing short of shocking, because even myself kind of working in this space and kind of knowing about how bad this was, it's even worse. It's even worse than we thought it was going to be. And like I was kind of hinting to this article that I read talking about the United States of fascist America, and the most fascist leader, Benito Mussolini, he said that fascism should rightly be called corporatism. That's a merger between corporate and government power. Now, I recently wrote a book, a bestseller book, by the way. If you don't have it, I recommend you go get it. It's called The Uncommunist Manifesto. Of course, it's a play on the original Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. It's on Amazon. We hit a bestseller, but man, we could sure use some more sales. I'd love to get that book out to you. We've priced it very cheap. We're just trying to get the information out there. Check it out on Amazon. But in that book, we basically broke down all the different what we call phantom versions of capitalism. In the original Communist Manifesto book, Karl Marx wrote all the different versions of communism. So we wrote all the different versions of what we call capitalism, which are not capitalism at all, but they're confused with capitalism, one of which we broke down as being corporatism. And basically, it's a merger of corporate and government power, or what good old Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum calls a public-private partnership. In my best German accent. That's not very good. But he talks about this public-private partnership, and that's exactly what this is. Public being the government, private being the corporations coming together and working together. And that's exactly what we've seen here. That's where America is. We have corporate and government power merging into a totalitarian behemoth, crushing any and all dissent. Worse than just crushing dissent, they never even allow it to grow, which of course is their whole plan in the first place, right? If they can train you what to think from the time you're a kid, using AI, they can manipulate your social media feed, which Facebook has admitted to doing since 2016, by the way. If they can manipulate your social media feed, they can induce, feelings of anger and peacefulness and scare you, things like that. They can start to change the way you think. They can show you enough of one ideology to scare you, and then show you why it's bad, and show you another ideology of why it's good. They can start to change the way you think. This is why I said earlier, you think that you're free to think, but you're not. Most of the thoughts that you have are not yours. There's this test that was done. I don't have all the exact details. I'm kind of spitting off the cuff here. But it was, they did these tests where they went up to people and they'd say, here, hold on, will you hold this cup for me and then answer a couple questions? And they'd give someone a hot cup of like tea or coffee. And then they'd ask them, they'd read a little bit of a story, and they'd say, this person that you've read here, the main character in this story, would you consider them to be a warm character or a cold character? And the people holding the warm cup of coffee would say that they were a warm character. And then they would do the same exact thing, but they'd give them a cold cup to hold. And they'd ask them the same exact question. They'd say, and the respondents would say they were a cold person. And so you can see how even your own thoughts can be manipulated by other subject matter that might be around you at that time. And so by manipulating your feeds, what you can see, what you can't see, the context in what you see it in, they can start to change this. And so it's not just about crushing any and all dissent. It's about preventing dissent from ever happening in the first place. It's powerful. And then if they can prevent it from ever stopping happening in the first place, and then if it does start to break out wherever, they can isolate it, and then they could crush it. Imagine how powerful that would be. Now, take, for example, the recent Twitter file revelations we're talking about here. The federal government took control of the big tech and social media giants to control free speech and dissent. And it wasn't just about, the Biden campaign pressuring Twitter. The FBI, as we know now, Mark Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan and said this, the FBI had weekly meetings with social media corporations to warn them of things like Russian interference, hack and leak operations and all these different things, which we know now were never true. So then on top of it, not only has the federal government been actively influencing social media platforms to show us, but they've been doing it based off of lies, off of false information. The result? Well, the result is we get social media suppression. Now, we get suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story, which a year ago I would have gotten kicked off the internet for even saying that to you, which is insane. Now, we know that it would have likely altered the presidential election outcome. Specifically, polls that were done said 16% of voters would have voted differently if the story would not have been suppressed by big tech. Now, if people had known about the story and known it had been suppressed by big tech, then it probably would have been even a bigger swing in voters. And we're talking about an election that had about a 50,000 person vote swing. You think that had anything to do with the outcome? An interference with an election? Now, teams of Twitter employees were building blacklists that we now know through these files that have come out. They were building blacklists that prevent disfavored tweets from trending, actively limiting the visibility of entire accounts and even trending topics. So like Charlie Kirk, for example, on Twitter, he's a Christian, podcast host that talks about political issues, and his account was... It was not shadow banned. It was whatever they called it. It was something else. But it was actively put on blacklists. It was actively put on lists to not allow it to trend, not allow it to be found in searches. It just wasn't called shadow banned. Visibility filtering, that's what they called it. VF. I mean, the fact that these people can go in front of a congressional committee under oath and be asked a direct question, are you doing shadow banning? And they say no. And that's not a lie because they're not doing shadow banning. They're actually doing visibility filtering. Isn't it the same thing? Oh, man. That's the world that we're in. We can see that Elon Musk now shows that U.S. political candidates were blacklisted while running for office. Literally, while they're running for office, they were blacklisted. Any other political parties? Was the other political party done? Not per the Twitter files. So look, this is a big deal because what happens when we take the largest communication platform and we open it back up? What happens? Does it start to reshape the world because we have open and transparent communication? I think it does. And that's why I think this is one of the biggest things happening right now in the world in the decentralized revolution, because when we break truth open, the world's going to change. You've been listening to The Mark Moss Show, talking about the decentralized revolution, looking at it through the lens of politics, finance, and technology. Thanks for listening.